Something rare is unfolding, quietly but powerfully. All the years you believed were lost, all the chapters you assumed were closed forever, are circling back, not as a punishment, but as a reward. The efforts you made in silence, the choices no one applauded, the inner work you did in private, the healing, the waiting, the invisible endurance, it's all being acknowledged now. You didn't miss your chance. You didn't fail. You weren't too late. Every second that felt stalled, every moment you thought time had forgotten you, it wasn't wasted. It was preparing you for this. That aching sense that the world kept moving while your life stood still is finally receiving its answer. And the response isn't loud or dramatic. It's exact, intimate, almost surgical in nature. Because this isn't just any astrological moment. Vesta, the asteroid of sacred devotion, just went direct in the transformative sign of Scorpio. And though very few are speaking about it, this is more than a cosmic shift. It may well be the quiet catalyst of this entire month. Vesta doesn't create flashy energy. It doesn't roar. It refines. It remembers. It scans through your soul's timeline and pinpoints where you stopped believing, where you felt disconnected, where the fire went out. And it lights that exact point again, not out of sentiment, but because you're finally ready to carry it forward. If you've been feeling like everything has been unraveling lately, you're not alone. It's not chaos. It's recalibration. The threads are not being cut. They're being retied, but this time with purpose and clarity. Patterns, people, memories, they're resurfacing, not to haunt you, but to show you what's unresolved and what's still sacred. There is a reason this is all happening now, and I'll walk you through that in just a bit. But for now, stay with me, because what's coming next will help you remember why you held on for so long, even when everything inside you screamed to let go. The quiet years, the heavy years, the confusing, lonely years where progress felt like illusion. They weren't empty. They were storing power. They were incubating something the world couldn't see. And now, that sealed vault is beginning to open. Not suddenly, not explosively, but with a slow, certain, sacred ignition. You've lived through times that felt frozen in meaning, like your life was paused while everyone else kept moving forward. But what if I told you this wasn't delay? It was alignment? Not punishment, but preparation? Because Vesta's return to forward motion in Scorpio is not about pushing you ahead. It's about unlocking what has always been within you. Suddenly, your energy is no longer reacting. It's choosing peace, choosing clarity, choosing purpose. That's how you know a deeper layer has shifted, not just emotionally, but spiritually. This isn't just about moving forward. It's about remembering why you started in the first place. This isn't some passing motivation that will fade by morning. This is restoration. That spark within you, long buried beneath survival mode, is flickering back to life. But it's not the naive fire of old dreams. It's refined now, focused, sacred. And here's the best part. You don't have to chase it anymore. What is meant for you isn't running from you. It's meeting you exactly where you are. You're not being given another chance. You're receiving the chance. The one that was always meant to arrive at this exact moment. And as the days unfold, what begins to rise within and around you might surprise you. It may not look like what you imagined, but it will feel like home. Because you're not stepping into a dream. You're stepping into your design. Not everyone will sense this shift. Many will scroll past it. They'll feel nothing and move on. But if something within you is stirring, if your attention keeps turning inward, if something deep is awakening that you can't yet name, then you are not like them. You're part of the few, the ones who know that real fire doesn't just appear, it's earned. And Scorpio doesn't give up its power easily. Vesta guards it fiercely, like a sanctuary without doors. This isn't energy that arrives just because you're finally ready. It comes to those who have chosen themselves in silence, through storms, without applause, again and again. It's not about waiting to be chosen. It's about choosing yourself until the flame recognizes you. This moment, this rare, quiet week, isn't random. It isn't just another celestial event. It's the reawakening of a promise, a vow, a sacred responsibility you took on long before this lifetime gave it form. Not in a mystical, distant way, but as a soul-level commitment that now demands to be honored. There won't be fireworks. There may not even be a clear aha moment. But that subtle shift, that unexpected clarity, that sense that the test you didn't know you were taking is finally behind you, that is the sign. This ignition is sacred. It won't burn like a wildfire. It will burn like a hearth, steadily, quietly, with a purpose that lasts. You're not simply entering a new phase. You're stepping fully into a role you've unknowingly been preparing for all along. So ask yourself, now that the fire is back, what will you do with it? There are choices we make in this lifetime, and then there are ancient vows, unseen, unspoken, yet etched into the very core of who we are. And now, in this sacred window, one of those vows is calling itself forward again. Have you noticed the way life seems to be guiding you back, almost mysteriously, almost insistently, to a dream, a vision, or a calling you once walked away from? Maybe it was something you let go of because it felt too big, too impossible, or simply out of alignment with the person you were at the time. But now somehow, it's circling back, not as a burden, but as something that finally feels right. This isn't a coincidence. This isn't some random recurrence. This is divine timing stepping into its role. You didn't fail that mission. Not really. You just weren't meant to begin it when you first found it. Every closed door, every painful delay, every chapter where you felt lost or aimless, that was preparation, not punishment. That was the slow unfolding of a deeper readiness. You were being trained in ways you didn't even realize, building endurance, refining your perspective, learning patience, and cultivating trust. You had to become the version of yourself who could not only see the calling clearly, but carry it with grace and power. And now, the map is beginning to unfold before you. People may begin to show up who feel strangely familiar, like soul companions or mirrors from a life you once glimpsed in dreams. Challenges that once paralyzed you now feel oddly approachable. The things you once doubted your capacity for now feel like sacred tasks, waiting to be fulfilled. Something within you might be whispering, softly but unmistakably, "This is it. This is what I've been waiting for." This isn't pressure, it's precision. It's not the world demanding more from you. It's your soul finally recognizing that you are ready. That quiet sense of rightness you feel, that's not imagination, that's resonance. You've crossed into a new frequency, one that aligns not just with what you want, but with who you truly are. And now, the path is clear, not because it's easy, but because it's true. This moment is not just another chapter. It is the arrival of a long-anticipated assignment, the sacred task you came into this lifetime to complete. Whether you consciously remember agreeing to it or not, your soul did. And now, after all the false starts, the waiting, the wondering, and the wandering, the time to act has finally come. You've done the work. You've listened to the signs. You followed your intuition even when it led you into uncomfortable terrain. You made sacrifices, letting go of relationships, roles, identities, because you sensed something was coming, something worth making space for. You tried rituals, prayers, intentions, self-work, and still, for a long time, nothing sparked. It was like standing before a perfectly arranged pile of wood. So much potential, so much readiness, but no flame. And in that stillness, people around you may have misunderstood. They may have made you feel like you were the problem, like you were missing some magical formula, some final step that would make the fire finally burn. But what no one told you is this: the flame wasn't yours to ignite. Not yet. Some fires are sacred, and sacred things have sacred timing. They cannot be forced. They can only be received. Vesta moving direct in Scorpio marks the end of that long, aching delay. The space between readiness and action, the purgatory between vision and embodiment, is finally collapsing. And when that sacred match is struck, it doesn't feel like an explosion. It feels like an ancient engine finally humming to life. You don't have to force anything now. The spark is here, not because you tried harder, but because something far older, far wiser than you has aligned on your behalf. You weren't wrong to feel like you were on the brink all these years. You weren't imagining the buildup. You truly were on the verge. But it wasn't time. The ignition wasn't late. It was divine. And now that it's here, this moment asks only one thing of you. Don't second guess it. Don't pause too long. Don't get lost trying to understand why now. Just move with it. Because when a sacred flame finally lights, it doesn't wait for you to feel ready. It moves quickly, purposefully, and without apology. It doesn't slow down for your doubt. If you hesitate too long, you risk watching the door shut once more, and sacred timing rarely offers a second round. You don't need another sign. The fire is real. The energy is active. This is your moment. Not to overthink, not to hesitate, but to act. To embody everything you've prayed for, everything you've prepared for. This isn't the time for cautious curiosity. This is the time for full-hearted devotion. And here's the truth. The fire was never waiting for your confidence. It was waiting for your alignment. And now that you've reached that place, the question isn't whether the calling is real. It's whether you're finally ready to let it change everything. For years, you've been loyal to something you couldn't even name. It wasn't a specific person or job or outcome. It was something deeper, more mysterious, a mission, a sacred frequency that's been pulling at your spirit in quiet ways, again and again, no matter how far you strayed or how many times you began again. Every new beginning was really a return. Every pivot, every surrender, every so-called failure was part of a spiral, circling you back towards something ancient, something essential. That essence hasn't changed, even if your form has. That wasn't coincidence. That was Vesta. Vesta is not just a celestial body. In astrology, she represents the eternal flame, the energy of devotion, not loud, not showy, but constant. She doesn't make a scene. She moves in the background, weaving invisible threads of sacred purpose through your life. She anchors your soul to the one thing you came here to truly protect, serve, and embody. And now, with Vesta moving direct in the intense, transformative sign of Scorpio, the invisible becomes visible. The path is no longer a feeling. It is a direction. The sense of purpose is no longer abstract. It is crystal clear. Your commitment is no longer hidden. It is undeniable. Devotion doesn't always look like discipline. Sometimes it simply looks like returning, again and again, even when the world calls you foolish, even when you feel lost, even when you don't know what you're serving, only that you must. You thought you were lost, but you weren't. You were being magnetized, drawn closer and closer to the one thing your soul swore it would never abandon. You've been walking with this purpose all along, and now it's time to finally walk it out. The twist no one tells you? That deep, irrational sense of loyalty you've carried. It isn't to a goal or success or even healing. It's to continuance, to staying on the path, to showing up for the thing that keeps calling you, even when it makes no sense. Vesta has always known who you are. She didn't need you to get stronger. She needed you to get still. She didn't want your hustle. She wanted your clarity. And now that you have it, you don't need permission. You just need to remember what you already agreed to do. And as that inner signal gets louder, as the fire builds, you'll begin to see clearly what was always waiting for you to claim it. There was a time when you only felt the signs, the synchronicities, the repeating symbols, the strange full circle moments that seemed too perfect to be coincidence. Back then, it may have felt like you were wandering aimlessly, moving without direction, caught in a fog of uncertainty. But that wasn't aimlessness. It was preparation. What looked like drifting was actually training. And now you're not just waking up because it's time to start something new. You're awakening because the part of you that has always known, always been ready, is finally taking the lead. Support doesn't always arrive wrapped in loud gestures or explosive revelations. Sometimes, the truest form of protection is so subtle it's nearly invisible. It hides in perfect timing, in conversations that seem casual but shift your world, in moments so understated they're easy to overlook. But now, under the direct gaze of Vesta and Scorpio, a time marked by emotional depth and strategic clarity, these hidden forces are stepping into the light, and their emergence may shake you to your core. Maybe it's a friend who reappeared in your life without explanation. Maybe it's a stranger whose words echoed a truth you'd forgotten. Or maybe it's an opportunity that, on paper, seemed nonsensical, but deep inside felt like it had been waiting for you. These moments aren't random. You're not just seeing the pattern now because it suddenly appeared. You're seeing it because you've come into alignment, an alignment that makes the once invisible threads visible at last. You were never going through this alone. Someone, somewhere, someone you may not have noticed or fully appreciated, was holding you in their prayers or intentions. They didn't do it for recognition. They did it because their quiet faith in your path acted as a bridge during the times you didn't even realize you were at the edge. This someone may have been a real person, someone you've underestimated, someone who never needed a spotlight. Or it may have been something more ethereal, a memory, a whisper, an intuition you dismissed as coincidence, but now realize was divine orchestration. These kinds of allies don't introduce themselves with grand announcements. They move like wind in tall grass, quiet, graceful, yet unmistakable once you're still enough to listen. And now, Vesta, carrying the sacred fire through the transformative terrain of Scorpio, is pulling them from the shadows, not as a reward, but as a sacred reminder. You were never the only one invested in your evolution. And now something even more profound begins to stir within you. Not just clarity after confusion, not just a return of purpose, but capacity, a deeper ability to hold, direct, and embody the power that has always been yours. You didn't lose your strength. You left it in a sacred place within you, a place only your most present, aligned self could return to. That place has always existed. It is older than your name, deeper than your story. It's the space within you where pure knowing lives, the inner sanctuary you visited as a child, in your dreams, in those fleeting moments just before giving up or breaking through. This space is your temple, not a place to go, but a way of being. And now, that temple is reawakening. For too long, distraction and distortion clouded your vision. Overthinking, fatigue, emotional spiraling, these forces dulled the senses and closed the doors to the sanctuary within. But something has shifted. You're no longer trying to find focus. Focus is beginning to find you. Your energy is no longer leaking into a dozen scattered directions. It is gathering, condensing, sharpening, aligning with purpose. You may notice it in small ways first. Your meditation deepens. Silence doesn't feel empty. It feels full. Your dreams begin to linger in your waking mind, like echoes of something real. You might be tempted to think that your creativity had dried up, that your motivation had disappeared. But it hadn't. It was simply waiting for you to be ready to take your seat on the throne of your own energy. This isn't about productivity. It's about sacred concentration, the ability to hold energy, to direct it with intention instead of letting it flicker and burn out. It's the difference between lighting 1,000 little candles and becoming the fire itself, steady, warm, enduring. You are not rebuilding a temple for anyone else. You are remembering how to be the temple. And every breath, every choice for presence over chaos, every moment you resist the spiral and root into stillness, these are the bricks being laid. And this sacred space is needed now, more than ever, because what's coming next demands the fullness of your presence. Something powerful is unfolding, not just around you, but through you. You're no longer chasing answers. You're no longer scrambling to fix or prove. The shift is happening beneath the surface, slow but undeniable. You are not becoming someone new. You are finally becoming who you were always meant to be. And in this quiet emergence, the initiation begins. There aren't any obvious signs flashing in front of you. No thunderclaps or dramatic revelations. Instead, there's something gentler, but far more powerful, guiding you now. A quiet pull, subtle yet undeniable, is drawing you in a very specific direction. Toward particular people, unfamiliar places, forgotten dreams, and long-dormant truths. And what's remarkable is that it finally feels like it makes sense, even if your logical mind hasn't caught up. Something ancient, deep within your bones, already understands. There's a force, magnetic, unwavering, calling you back to yourself. This isn't random spiritual noise or chaotic desire. It's not one more distraction dressed up as destiny. What you're experiencing is a profound internal alignment, a kind of soul calibration that rarely comes with fanfare, but changes everything. This is what it feels like when the fog of uncertainty clears and the ember at the center of your being becomes visible again. And Vesta, now moving direct in Scorpio, isn't leading you toward just anything. It's steering you toward what deeply matters, toward what has always mattered. The magnetic landscape of your life is shifting. Things that once excited or tempted you, the noise that used to pull you in every direction, are losing their hold. Not because you're bored, but because your inner compass is tuning to a more refined frequency, one that recognizes depth, resonance, truth. This shift is why you suddenly thought of someone you haven't spoken to in years, and the image of them came with unexpected clarity. It's why that idea you shelved long ago suddenly feels not only relevant but inevitable. It's why places you've never visited are now surfacing in your dreams, on signs, in conversations that don't seem coincidental. But this pull, it isn't rooted in longing or fantasy. It's not about chasing something external. It's about memory. Not the kind stored in your conscious mind, but in your soul's archive. You're not discovering something new. You're remembering something timeless, something sacred that has always belonged to you. That's why it doesn't feel rushed, but it does feel urgent. It feels like a homecoming, like returning to a fire that has always been burning inside you, waiting patiently for you to notice its glow. And once you feel that heat, that direction, there's no going back. Suddenly, the old distractions lose their appeal. The detours lose their shimmer. You begin to see everything clearly, not through the lens of fear or indecision, but through a quiet certainty. You're not wandering anymore. You're orbiting a center, a mission, a truth that no longer needs your doubt to prove its validity. And here's what might surprise you most. This calling doesn't feel like pressure. It doesn't come with tension or anxiety. It feels natural, familiar, like something you've always known but somehow forgot. Like clarity that arrives not with a bang, but with a deep, settling breath. It's jarring in its simplicity. You wonder how you could have missed it for so long. What used to take hours of pacing, countless journal pages, signs, tarot cards, and endless mental loops to decipher, now just feels obvious. You know what you want. You know what you will no longer tolerate. You see who fuels your light and who drains it. The internal debates are falling away, not because you have all the answers, but because you've found a deeper recognition that transcends explanation. It's not about overthinking anymore. It's about truth. But this kind of truth can feel unsettling. You expect the thunder, the drama, the struggle that used to accompany growth. But now, all you find is stillness. And that can feel scary, especially to a part of you that grew used to chaos, used to noise being a sign of movement. But this quiet, it isn't emptiness, it's clarity. And clarity is often mistaken for loneliness at first. Don't be surprised if you feel distant from those who are still spinning in confusion. That distance isn't judgment, it's alignment. Not everyone arrives at their truth at the same time, and your energy no longer needs to wait for others to catch up. You're not being cold, you're just choosing clarity over codependency. And the tension you feel? That's the old scaffolding falling apart. The structure of struggle crumbling because it's no longer required. You may have felt stuck for so long, like life was passing you by while you kept circling the same space, making effort after effort without reward. But you weren't behind. You were being refined, trained, quietly, invisibly shaped by experiences that felt like losses, delays, disappointments. While others were seemingly thriving, you were being prepared for a much more precise journey, not louder, not bigger, but deeper. Now that Vesta is direct in Scorpio, the undercurrents that have shaped your transformation are surfacing. You don't need to chase anymore. You are being activated. Every moment of stillness that once felt like stagnation was actually preparing you. You built strength that doesn't come from speed, but from presence. You developed an inner clarity that can't be taught in books or courses, and that's why this next chapter belongs to you. Not because you finally earned it, but because you became someone who no longer needs to question if you're ready. This isn't a reward, it's a return. A restoration of what was always meant to be yours once you were able to carry it without losing yourself. Vesta doesn't show up because you pleaded for divine timing. She appears when your inner rhythm is finally in sync with an ancient, precise frequency, one that cannot be faked or fast-tracked. That's why things are beginning to click now, why your mind is clearer, why your focus is sharper, why your energy feels more anchored than it has in years. This is what most people miss. Spiritual training doesn't always look like progress. Sometimes it looks like being alone, like waiting, like failure. But those moments weren't dead ends. They were the exact chisels your soul needed. And now, you're not searching anymore. You're recognizing. You're seeing what's always been there, just beneath the surface, patiently waiting for your readiness. This isn't about trying harder. This is about embodying what has quietly been cultivated all along. You are no longer proving, you are fulfilling. Not out of pressure, but from a place of deep internal alignment. You don't need to hustle. You need to show up. You're not starting from the beginning. You're continuing from mastery. The parts of you that felt lost weren't destroyed. They've simply been waiting at the next step, ready to be claimed. Not as a redo, but as a restoration. This is the moment it all begins to make sense. Subtly, powerfully, irrevocably. And if you've stayed with me this long, thank you. Truly. Your attention, your presence, it means something. If this resonated, consider sharing your thoughts, your experiences, your story. And if you'd like more content that speaks to this kind of depth and clarity, subscribing ensures you won't miss what comes next. Until then, take care of your energy, protect your clarity, and remember, you were never lost. You were just preparing.